Everyone knows sharks need water, but twice every day on Australia's Great Barrier Reef, the ocean simply disappears. As the tide retreats, entire coral reefs are left stranded beneath the tropical sun. Fish scramble for the deepest pools, oxygen levels crash, and what was once an underwater ecosystem becomes a maze of isolated puddles. For most sharks, it's a death sentence, but one small genus evolved for exactly this moment. Instead of swimming away, it crawls beneath shrinking pools, survives for hours in water almost devoid of oxygen, and calmly waits for the sea to return. This is the story of the Epaulette sharks. Also known as the walking sharks, Epaulette sharks belong to the genus Hemiscelium. The name Epaulette comes from the decorative shoulder pieces worn on military uniforms. In these sharks, it refers to the large black spot found just behind the pectoral fins in most species. Epaulette sharks are part of the bamboo shark family, Hemiscelidae. This is a small group of sharks known for their long, slender bodies, gentle nature, and preference for life on the sea floor. Unlike the sleek, fast-swimming sharks that patrol the open oceans, bamboo sharks are built for navigating the complex world of reefs and lagoons. There are currently 10 recognized species of epaulette shark. However, the name epaulette shark is also commonly used for one particular species, Hemiscelium ocellatum, which is found around northern Australia and is by far the best studied member of the group. At first glance, an epaulette shark hardly resembles the image that comes to mind when most people think of a shark. Most species grow to less than a metre in length and possess a remarkably slender body, a short, rounded snout, and broad paddle-shaped fins. Their bodies are decorated with intricate patterns of spots, speckles, and bands that help them blend into the reefs they inhabit. Species in the genus are found across tropical reefs of northern Australia, New Guinea, and eastern Indonesia. Many species occupy surprisingly small ranges, sometimes restricted to particular island groups or regions. In fact, several species have only been discovered and formally described within the last few decades, including one, Dudgeon's walking shark, from earlier this year, making it the most recently discovered shark as of the time of writing. Although epaulette sharks share many distinctive adaptations, they are also one of the youngest shark radiations known. Genetic studies suggest many species diverged within the last several million years, as repeated changes in sea level isolated populations on separate reef systems. Over time, each isolated population followed its own evolutionary path, eventually giving rise to the remarkable diversity of walking sharks seen today. Despite their small size and harmless nature, epaulette sharks have attracted enormous scientific interest. Researchers have come to regard them as one of the most extraordinary groups of sharks on Earth. The reason for this becomes clear when you look at the environment they call home. Life on coral reefs follows the rhythm of the tides. In many reef systems, the reef flat lies only a couple of meters below the surface at high tide. But as the tide retreats, the sea begins to withdraw from these shallow platforms. What was once a continuous underwater landscape is transformed into a maze of isolated pools, narrow channels, exposed coral heads, and rocky outcrops. Many epaulette sharks live in exactly these shallow habitats, particularly around Australia's Great Barrier Reef and the coast of New Guinea. During the day, they usually rest beneath coral ledges or within crevices, emerging after sunset to hunt across the reef. But as the tide continues to fall, the world around them changes dramatically. Unlike the open ocean, these isolated pools are no longer replenished by a steady flow of fresh seawater. Every fish, crab, coral, sponge, and microscopic organism within them continues to consume oxygen through respiration, yet little new oxygen is brought in to replace it. As the hours pass, oxygen concentrations steadily decline, up to 80% less oxygen than during high tide. At the same time, the shallow water warms beneath the tropical sun, while evaporation can increase its salinity. By the time the tide returns, these pools can bear little resemblance to the cool, oxygen-rich reef that existed only a few hours earlier. For most marine animals, these rapidly changing conditions are a serious challenge. but they also create an opportunity. As the water drains from the reef, small fishes, crustaceans, worms, octopuses, and countless other animals become concentrated within shrinking pools or trapped beneath rocks and coral rubble. Prey that could normally disappear into the vastness of the reef suddenly has nowhere to hide. Most sharks, however, are unable to take advantage of this daily feast. Their active lifestyles require a constant supply of oxygen-rich water flowing across their gills, and prolonged exposure to oxygen-poor conditions can quickly become dangerous. As the tide falls, they simply leave, following the retreating water back towards deeper parts of the reef. The epaulette shark evolved a different strategy. Instead of retreating with the tide, it stays behind. As the reef empties, it continues searching for prey among rocks, coral rubble, and shallow pools that other predators have abandoned. Some of these pools become so depleted of oxygen that many fishes begin to suffocate. Yet the shark continues hunting with remarkable composure. Over millions of years, this disappearing world shaped one of the most extraordinary collections of adaptations found in any shark. The first of these adaptations solved an obvious problem. If the ocean has disappeared, how do you move through what remains? Moving across a reef at low tide presents an obvious problem. Swimming is no longer an option. Instead of open water, the shark is faced with a labyrinth of shallow pools, exposed coral, loose rubble, and narrow channels, many containing only a few centimeters of water. This is where the epaulette shark's most famous adaptation comes into play. Rather than relying on powerful sweeps of its tail like most sharks, an epaulette shark uses its broad, muscular pectoral and pelvic fins almost like limbs. By planting one fin while advancing the opposite fin, it produces an alternating gait that propels it across the sea floor. The body bends from side to side as the fins push against the substrate, allowing the shark to crawl through spaces where swimming would be impossible. Although this behavior has earned them the nickname walking sharks, they are not literally walking in the same way that mammals or reptiles do. Their fins remain unmistakably those of a fish, supported by cartilage rather than bones with joints like our own limbs. Instead, they have evolved a remarkably effective way of using those fins to gain traction against the reef. Nor are they the only sharks capable of this behavior. A handful of other bottom-dwelling species can use their fins to shuffle across the seabed, but epaulette sharks have taken this ability further than almost any other, routinely using it to navigate the intricate landscape of tidal reefs. This method of locomotion offers several advantages. It allows the shark to squeeze through narrow gaps between coral heads, climb over rocks and rubble, and move between isolated pools left behind by the retreating tide. More importantly, crawling requires less space than swimming, allowing them to continue hunting in places where larger predators simply cannot follow. Researchers have even observed epaulette sharks briefly hauling themselves across damp coral or algae-covered rock to reach a neighboring pool. These journeys are usually short, and the shark remains wet throughout, but they demonstrate just how well adapted these animals are to a world that is constantly changing around them. Epaulette sharks can swim, but even when the reefs are fully submerged, they typically prefer to crawl along the sea floor. Yet, even walking cannot solve the reef's greatest challenge. Moving between pools is only useful if the shark can survive inside them. And as the tide continues to fall, the oxygen in those isolated pockets of water begins to disappear. For most vertebrates, oxygen is non-negotiable. Every cell in the body depends on it to produce the energy needed to survive. The brain is particularly vulnerable. Although it accounts for only a small fraction of body mass, it consumes a disproportionate amount of the body's oxygen. In humans, even a few minutes without oxygen can result in permanent brain damage. Yet, twice each day, epaulette sharks willingly enter environments where oxygen levels can fall to almost nothing. When oxygen begins to disappear, most fishes become increasingly stressed. Their breathing rate rises as they attempt to extract every last molecule of oxygen from the water. Activity declines, coordination begins to fail, and if conditions persist, death soon follows. The epaulette shark responds very differently. Rather than fighting against the lack of oxygen, it dramatically reduces its demand for it. As oxygen levels fall, The shark slows its movements and lowers its metabolic rate, reducing the amount of energy its cells require. In effect, it begins operating in an energy-saving mode, allowing its limited oxygen supply to last far longer than it otherwise could. Even more remarkably, its nervous system appears to enter a protective state. Studies have shown that the shark suppresses the activity in parts of its brain, reducing the energy required to keep nerve cells functioning, while still maintaining enough activity to remain responsive to its surroundings. Instead of allowing oxygen starvation to trigger widespread damage, the brain effectively rides out the crisis until conditions improve. This is especially impressive because, in most vertebrates, the greatest danger often comes not during oxygen deprivation itself, but when oxygen suddenly returns. As tissues are flooded with oxygen once again, unstable molecules known as reactive oxygen species can damage cells, proteins, and DNA, a process known as reperfusion injury. In humans, this contributes to the damage caused by strokes and heart attacks. Epaulette sharks appear to possess an extraordinary resistance to this kind of injury. After enduring repeated episodes of severe hypoxia, they recover with little or no detectable damage to their brains or other organs. Experiments have shown that they can tolerate oxygen concentrations that would prove fatal to many other fishes, remaining alive for hours in conditions approaching complete oxygen depletion. Exactly how they achieve this remains an active area of research. Scientists have identified a range of physiological and cellular adaptations that help protect their tissues, but the full picture is still being uncovered. What is already clear, however, is that the epaulette shark possesses one of the highest tolerances to low oxygen ever documented in a shark. These remarkable abilities have attracted attention well beyond marine biology. By understanding how epaulette sharks protect their brains from oxygen deprivation, researchers hope to gain new insights into conditions such as stroke, cardiac arrest, and other diseases caused by interrupted blood flow. While a shark is unlikely to provide a cure on its own, it has become an unexpected model for studying one of medicine's greatest challenges. For the epaulette shark, however, this is simply another night on the reef. Low oxygen is not an emergency to overcome. It is an ordinary part of life. And by evolving to tolerate conditions that force other predators to retreat, these sharks have gained access to a hunting ground with remarkably little competition. For all of their remarkable physiological adaptations, epaulette sharks spend most of their lives doing something surprisingly ordinary, searching for their next meal. They are primarily nocturnal hunters. During the day, they usually rest beneath coral ledges, inside caves, or among dense coral formations, where their intricate patterns provide excellent camouflage. As darkness falls and the reef becomes active once more, they emerge to patrol the seafloor with slow, deliberate movements. Unlike many larger sharks that pursue prey over long distances, epaulette sharks are careful, methodical foragers. They weave through coral heads, investigate narrow crevices, and probe beneath rocks and rubble in search of animals hidden from view. Their keen sense of smell, combined with the ability to detect the tiny electrical signals produced by living animals, helps them locate prey even when it is concealed beneath the substrate. Their diet is remarkably varied. Crabs, shrimps, polychaete worms, octopuses, small fishes, and a wide variety of other reef invertebrates all feature on the menu. As the tide retreats and prey becomes trapped within shrinking pools, these hunting opportunities become even more abundant. Catching prey, however, is only half the challenge. Many of the animals they feed on are protected by tough shells or hard exoskeletons. To deal with this, epaulette sharks possess specialized teeth that perform different roles within the mouth. The slippery teeth near the front of their mouth are ideal for gripping slippery prey, while broader, flatter teeth farther back help crush the shells of crustaceans and mollusks before they are swallowed. Combined with powerful jaws, this allows the shark to exploit a wider range of prey than would otherwise be possible. Although they are predators, epaulette sharks pose no threat to people. Their small size and gentle temperament make them among the least intimidating of all sharks, and divers often encounter them calmly resting beneath coral overhangs or slowly exploring the reef at night. By combining patient hunting with the ability to remain active long after other predators have retreated, Epaulette sharks occupy a unique ecological niche. Every low tide opens a temporary hunting ground that few other sharks can exploit, allowing these remarkable animals to make the most of a world that literally disappears around them. Like all bamboo sharks, epaulette sharks reproduce by laying eggs rather than giving birth to live young. During the breeding season, females produce pairs of leathery egg cases, which they carefully wedge into crevices among coral, rocks, or sponges. Hidden within the complex structure of the reef, the developing embryos are afforded some protection from predators and the constant movement of waves and tides. Development is slow. Depending on water temperature, the embryos may remain inside their protective egg cases for 4 months or more before finally hatching. Throughout this time, the young shark survives entirely on nutrients supplied by its yolk sac as its fins, gills, and distinctive color pattern gradually take shape. When the hatchling finally emerges, it measures only around 15 centimeters or 6 inches in length. Despite its tiny size, it is already a fully formed predator. There is no parental care, no nursery, and no period of dependence. Within hours, the young shark begins exploring the reef in search of small invertebrates, relying on the same camouflage and walking behavior that serve the adults so well. Growing up, however, is a slow process. Epaulette sharks may take 6 or 7 years to reach sexual maturity, after which the cycle begins again. Each new generation must learn to survive in a habitat that floods and drains twice each day, a challenge these remarkable sharks have been meeting for millions of years. For a group of sharks so well known for their remarkable adaptations, epaulette sharks remain surprisingly mysterious. Although the common epaulette shark is one of the best studied reef sharks in the world, many of its relatives are known from only a handful of scientific surveys or have only been formally recognized in recent years. As mentioned earlier, Dudgeon's walking shark was only formally described earlier this year. For a group of sharks with such remarkable biology, epaulette sharks remain surprisingly poorly understood, and new discoveries continue to reshape our understanding of the genus. Many of these newly described species also have remarkably small distributions. Rather than roaming across entire oceans, some are restricted to individual island groups or isolated reef systems in eastern Indonesia and New Guinea. While this isolation has helped drive the evolution of distinct species, it also leaves them especially vulnerable. If a single reef system is damaged, an entire species could be affected. Like coral reefs around the world, these habitats face growing pressure from climate change, declining water quality, coastal development, and other human activities. Coral bleaching can transform vibrant reef ecosystems into barren landscapes, reducing the shelter and prey that epaulette sharks depend upon. Although these sharks are among the most tolerant of low oxygen and environmental extremes, even they cannot thrive if the reef itself begins to disappear. Fortunately, there is also reason for optimism. Many populations occur within marine protected areas, and research into the genus has expanded rapidly over the past 2 decades. Each new expedition improves our understanding of where these sharks live, how they evolved, and what they need to survive. For most sharks, the greatest mysteries lie in the deep ocean. But for the epaulette sharks, they lie in some of the shallowest water on Earth. Despite living just beneath the surface, these remarkable animals continue to remind us how much of the natural world remains to be discovered, and how important it is to protect the fragile reefs they call home. I hope you enjoyed this journey into the epaulette sharks. If you're interested in the research behind this episode, you can find a document with image credits and sources in the description below. These videos take a great deal of time and research to produce. They will always remain free to watch. But if you would like to support the channel and gain access to new videos a little earlier, you can find a link to my Patreon below as well. And to everyone who already supports the channel, thank you. Your support genuinely helps make these videos possible. If this video sparked your curiosity, don't let it stop here. Share it, talk about it, and keep learning. There's still so much to discover about the world's rare and remarkable species. And the more we understand, the better our chances of protecting them. Thanks for watching.